Good. Is everyone ready?
Yep.
Cool. Let's kick off. Well, so welcome everyone to another episode of the Future of B2B Digital Marketing podcast. Today we are diving deep into the omnichannel universe in B2B. So let's kick off defining what omnichannel really means in our context. Okay. In B2B, omnichannel refers to multi-channel sales and marketing approach that aims to provide seamless customer experience regardless of the channel or device. The goal is to engage potential clients or existing customers at multiple points along their buyer journey. So, for example, if a client might first hear about a product through a LinkedIn ad, then attend a webinar, receive a series of personalized emails, and finally engage in a one-to-one meeting before making a purchase decision. In an omnichannel strategy, each of these touch points would be interconnected. Okay. But of course, life is not that simple. It's full of challenges. That's why we are here to discuss these particular challenges. For example, when scaling, going to other geographies, different business verticals, etc. So how we maintain that omnichannel strategy. But before we start, let's do a quick round of introduction. Mariette, would you like to start?
Yeah, of course. My name is Mariette Ferreira. I'm CMO at 11FS. 11FS is a fintech consultancy operating out of the UK, but with clients globally. Pleased to be here.
Thank you, Mariette. David?
Hi, everyone. I'm David Reid. I'm VP Global Growth at Transmission. Transmission are a global B2B specialist marketing agency. We cover all geos from US, EMEA, APAC, and we're coming up to 10 years old this year.
And congratulations about the Adweek award.
I should have probably mentioned that. Yeah, really great. Adweek Agency of the Year. We're really proud.
Congratulations.
Amazing. Jonathan?
Hi there. Yeah, my name's Jonathan Connor. I currently work at Nvidia, and I'm a marketing specialist. And my special sort of topics are alliance and partner marketing, and looking at how we can best leverage our ecosystem and bring together that ecosystem and form that into go-to-market campaigns.
Brilliant. Liam?
Yeah, hi, I'm Liam Bartholomew, VP of Marketing at Cognism, and we're a global B2B data platform, headquartered in the UK, but with presence globally as well.
Thank you. And Tom?
And my name is Tom Gatten, and I'm the Chief Executive and Founder of Adzact, which is a B2B ad platform.
Thank you. Well, and I'm Joaquin Dominguez, and I'm Head of Marketing of Adzact. So let's kick off. Now that we've framed our discussion in the omnichannel context, let's delve into our first challenge, which is scaling global resonance. So how do we adapt our messaging across multiple channels to resonate on a global scale? Of course, I keep this open for a discussion. Feel free to interrupt yourself, make questions. Who wants to go first?
Well, maybe I'll have a go if you like.
Thank you.
So, having quite a bit of experience having to work across multiple channels and different cultures and doing things both on a global but also on a regional basis, sometimes teams can fall into the trap of it's about translation. So we've created something at corporate, we translated and we ship that out into France, Germany, Japan, wherever. But experience has shown that really you really need to understand the culture and look at localization. So for scaling into to gain that sort of global resonance, it's about having consistency in message, making sure the brand is truly represented. It doesn't conflict in the culture you're going into, but really understanding that culture, the preferences, the behavior of the market that you're entering into. And again, from experience, a straightforward translation really doesn't cut the mustard.
And
presumably,
so I think,
taking on that local expertise is really important.
And presumably not everyone uses the same channels all around the world, I suppose, as well. So an omni-channel strategy that might rely on, I don't know, LinkedIn might just simply not work in certain countries.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Like, we've found that, more than just taking the same content and translating it, which is what's so like, is like, I suppose, like with a standard quite at the time, we found that you just have to do content for that market, and obviously the pain of that is it takes so much more time to be able to like go away and create specific content per market, like separate, rather than even just having an English podcast. We have like a starting up a podcast for each regions in natural language, talking about the things that those like regions like care about more, from influencers as well that they're listening to. But we've even found it goes as far as not just in like, so that's like, we'll do that for like the DACH region for like Germany, and we'll do that for for France in French. But even thinking about it, when we go to the US, it's been a massive change for us. Like, was like being told that some of our ads in the UK accent like were quite jarring in the US market, and then people thought that it wasn't a product for them. So then we just like reworked a lot of these ads, did new voiceovers with American voices, changed the content to be from like again influencers that they care about, talking about problems that are maybe more focused on the US. As like for our product, they're more solution aware, there's a ton more competitors, and those were a couple of changes that we actually started doing in the last 3-4 months, and we've already seen like now in the last 2 months our best record months of pipeline for the US, which we struggled with. I mean, there's lots of other changes going on at the same time, but I definitely think that that's played a part in getting traction.
I mean, I think. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, David.
Yeah, I was going to add to that I think you have to have a global standard, right? I think when the word global audience, is there truly global audiences? Well, at persona level, yes, right. There are things that are relevant to someone and that are going to take an interest. But I think what everyone was saying is, how do I make that relevant? How do I make that resonate with them? And that's where the things like cultural impact and local insights really play a role. And what I think for me, where I've seen success is when you create a standard of content, your standard of campaigns. These are the things that we want markets to be able to add their local flavor to it. And so what you're doing is getting consistency, and also just thinking about budget and time. Creating everything in each geo takes a lot of effort, and it takes a lot of marketing dollars to get there. So if we build it at a point of saying, well, this is the campaign, this is the content, but your responsibility now is to add that flavor, and that may be just something quite simple as the opening kind of premise to the piece of content. It may be adapting things like the tone and how it's delivered. So, US to EMEA and APAC is jarring the same way as we go the other way. We do see that a lot, certainly with global US kind of HQ'd organizations. The EMEA audiences almost jar a little bit to that, Americanisms and colloquial terms, or just visually, and so you immediately know you're going to have a struggle going to market with that. And I think someone mentioned about the channels. It's absolutely right. And certainly, maybe less so in terms of US to EMEA, because, okay, if there's not a LinkedIn, it's going to be Zing. And,
do you think the channels are basically the same? Channel mix, expectations of channel mix are the same?
I think broadly speaking, I think you're looking at social displays, you're looking at content syndication and things like channels like that, email. How someone consumes it. I think you take that kind of insight and go, well, where's my weighting here? How am I going to balance my activation channel? But when you go into APAC, I think that's when it becomes a really big channel. Certainly into markets where things like WeChat, so China and the likes, people don't respond in the same way to digital advertising in those kind of places. So your marketing completely has to change. So I always go back to that saying, is there truly a global audience? Probably not, but there's certainly a basis of people within functions, within roles in organizations that we can tailor this for.
I think there's definitely one difference I've observed between the US and the UK in terms of channel mix and effectiveness. I sat in once for 2 days with some American Express telemarketers in Florida who were doing dialing out. There was massive, like, it was like giant building, like a sideways skyscraper. And there was this one massive room that had about 250 telemarketers in there. They were selling a gold and platinum card and services around it to businesses in the US. And they were doing a lot of dials a day, like hundreds of dials a day. But it was just, and I've done the same in the UK, sitting with telesales teams in the UK, B2B telesales teams. And it was night and day in terms of the response they got. Their attitude was also totally different. Like they I don't know, it's like it's a very prestigious job in the US. It's much more prestigious than it is here. I think in the UK, we see telesales as a bit degrading, but they absolutely did not think like that. They were kings on top of the world. They've got like prizes, everyone celebrating when someone sold something. And the response they got over the phone for people they would call randomly was so generous, and people would genuinely take the time to just chat with them about loads of stuff, tell them really openly about their finances, like what cards they had, what challenges they had, and like would speak with the biggest difference. They would just speak with them for hours. Whereas when I've done it in the UK, every single person wants to get you off the phone immediately, not always, but you know what I mean? The difference was super night and day in that sense. I don't know if this is still the case post-pandemic, because this was pre-pandemic, but
I think to David's point, if we all had our way, then we would, have the budgets and the resources to customize and personalize to the nth degree. But, you hit a point where you have to, I'm a big fan of repurposing. So to David's example, you sort of have your core channels, your core messaging, and then you maybe that layer of or localization rather, happens with your local experts, people that understand the customer nuances of how they relate to your product, how, the language they use, literally, but also, the way they express themselves. Because the reality is just, from channels, messaging, go to market, if you don't have an unlimited budget, that you're going to have to repurpose and take those learnings and scale it. And then the challenge is just how you do that effectively rather than trying to do it differently for everyone.
Yeah, it sounds like it's very clear that you need to have like a brand global perspective that then you implement locally according to the different channels, messaging, go-to-market, depending on different realities. What about the key considerations when scaling from an ABM approach, where you know very well the pain points of a particular organization, for example, to a broader strategy when you go after, I don't know, hundreds or 1,000 companies in a new market from an omnichannel perspective? It's like kind of a long question.
Most examples I hear, people are trying to go the other way. They're trying to go broad, from a broad strategy to ABM rather than from ABM broader. So, but I suppose, it's almost just the challenge reversed. But, if you have a very good sense of your customers, that's a great place to be. And then you can really tap into those pain points, those jobs to be done, the learnings that you've had, and scale that. So I'd rather have that problem.
Yeah, I was going to say we're probably more in the position of being broad and wanting to go narrow and go to more like an ABM approach, like for some of our segments. And then, but I would say that going wide again, and what we've learned, like starting casting that wide and then having some sort of like control over it again, is that at first we like do this whole like target everyone with everything all of the time, build our like ICP and just go like product messaging, content messaging, thought leadership, social proof, they get everything, with the idea that they, you never know what part of the sales cycle they're in.
Yeah.
But obviously going for these super huge audiences, we then actually did have to like edit them a bit. So we had like, it's great that, the advice, you bigger the audience, cheaper your CPMs, and but then what we did find is that like there were some organizations and industries that are taking up huge amounts of impression share, and all of these and they're like, and actually, and then if we dig back into the CRM, they're not converting very well. So where that's like you go wide again, but then you need to start editing back down again. So then we have like a nice process of like going through these companies, removing them out, then testing, bring them back in sometimes, and things change. So I think actually everything that you learn and probably do in ABM, which is being specific, thinking about it, you have to apply still when you're wide. It's just like maybe like the messaging and the content side of it is broader again, rather than it being like super specific to that audience.
Well, I think there's a remedy to that. I think I'm in the line of very much take from scale and then zero in, and really using zeroing on for ABM is who are the accounts that matter most in terms of are there strategic accounts, where are they in their deal cycle, and what's the opportunity worth, and getting that balance. But I think when you're scaling out, being able to determine those customers that are in passive buying motion, so or brand, they're very much interested in what we can sell to them, but they're perhaps not there in terms of that need. And those who are in the demand motions, those who are in active buying motions, and getting that balance between the two keeps you, well, going to your point, Liam, where you're not going, someone's sucking up all my budget, because they're the ones that you should be then as a journey going, right, well, there's interest, they're active, what is that? And that connection between marketing and sales is really where ABM comes to life. So that's a great conversation for sales to say, look, we're getting a load of engagement here. Is anything that okay, I'm making that quite simplified, but you move that into, well, let's do something targeting these guys. Let's identify those critical decision makers. I think when people go from ABM outwards, the challenge is that you're forgetting all the people that you need to be aware and influence within that journey, even though they may not be the one to pull the trigger. And so the going down into it, which is kind of against where we were going with ABM, because the flip the funnel kind of thing. But when you can kind of zero in, I think your dollars are going to be more effective, because you're not only going for those accounts that are worthwhile to spend personalized content and marketing dollars on. It's a greater chance of success, greater chance of winning. So we're very much pushing and using data to identify those audiences, and then allowing the dollars just to their own brand motion. Let's just keep them aware. Let's keep them interested and engaged in what we're talking about. And then when they hit that demand motion, that's when you can start recognizing, well, I'm not now wasting that money on people who aren't going to be interested in the product right now, the service right now, because they're not in motion. And that's always a difficult point. What data can you use, that audience intelligence, to be able to split those audiences? And a lot of the time, Liam, like you were saying, it's continue to review, and it's trying to pick up on signals. So I think that helps again with that global resonance. You're talking to me about something that's relevant to me and where I am, not only geographically, but then where I am in my buying journey.
I definitely think some metrics just mean different things when you're going after big companies and small companies. And a really common mistake is to lump big companies and small companies into the same audience and advertise to them in the same way, because I don't think click-through rate means the same thing when you're targeting big companies, because you can only generate an opportunity a couple of times a year with the same company. Let's say, I don't know, let's be generous and say that you might have to create and close 5 opportunities with a client before finally they actually close one, in a year. But the number of employees at a company can vary a lot more than just 1, 2, 3, or 4 or 5. It can be tens of thousands, and it can massively suck up, impressions, as you said, Liam, and clicks. Like there are some companies that just have thousands of people sitting around being served loads of ads, clicking on loads of them, and they never buy, and they're massive vampires of budget. And yeah, you need to just click through. You can have a massively high click-through rate and be hugely failing in your ads.
I guess that comes back to that point, but you may be failing if you're thinking about those people you want them to buy, but the reality is that they're interested, right? And they're interested in brands. So when it comes to that point of purchase and need, I'd rather my Cognism ads are the ones that they're remembering because they've been clicking on it and they're interested. And I think that's the point I was kind of making. I was going like, let's just determine those, because we can then determine what our budget goes towards, and we're not going to have media wastage. But even if they are clicking, I think it just comes to that, when we've got it later, attribution. What does it mean? What does it mean to us? Clicks are good, but let's not assume those clicks are turned into pipe and into revenue.
Yeah,
all the time.
Not always good. It's like the Royal Air Force is one in the UK, clicks on billions of ads. It's really common to see people at Royal Air Force in their LinkedIn, like most common accounts that are engaging.
And they will,
because they've got a lot of people sitting around, not flying planes on LinkedIn.
Yeah, Jonathan, I think we have a good conversation about ABM and its evolution. Like you've seen like ABM really focused on winning this mega deal, but also now like a new approach more around automation.
Yeah, I think not that I'm that old, but I've seen it kind of turn on its head. So I guess, I don't know, nearly 20 years ago when I first sort of heard about account-based marketing and was sent on these training courses and everything, it was really all about how do we put together a campaign that is really just going to focus on the one mega deal. So, it could be a huge global bank or a global conglomerate. And how do we bring together all of these different components, and how do we deliver it? And how do we make sure that we influence the right people in this organization? Anything from having, somebody juggling in the reception of their multi-story headquarters office to how do we reach the CEO, and what content, what message, and who should be delivering that message at a board level, etc. So right away from that sort of complexity of, spending a huge amount of money and a huge amount of resources on one opportunity, to kind of the automated flow where my experience has been that the smaller you can make your focus account list for ABM, and you have that marketing and sales alignment, which from experience again is not always easy to achieve, and then having the right content delivered to who we believe to be the right personas in those organizations. So I've seen it turn around and go from kind of this really sort of manual, hands-on approach, resources a huge amount of money, to kind of an automated platform where it really does rely hugely on the data that goes in at the front end, and then how you manage that data and how the system actually modifies the data and the models you have in order to achieve the kinds of results that the guys are talking about, that that we're getting the clicks from the right people, that we're hitting the right influences, that we're actually being able to move this opportunity through the pipe from not just sort of an exposure awareness to something where we can see an engagement. And they're moving from sort of reading an ad to well, now they've just spent half an hour reading a white paper on something we have. This is demonstrating the amount of engagement. So yeah, I've seen things change quite a lot, and probably for the good, because these huge ABM campaigns of 20 years ago, some you win, some you lose, and when you lose, it hurts bad. Where it's a huge amount. But the automated approaches with the platforms now and using AI, etc., in order to help you make the right decisions.
Yeah.
Is certainly a big improvement, but you still need to, in my experience, you still need to have a very limited number of target accounts. The more you put in, the more data you generate, the more distraction it has, and the harder it becomes to actually get to that stage of creating opportunity and pipe.
Yeah. And let's talk about creativity within B2B marketing, within ABM. I know, Mariette, David, we talk about this like company because of how much you have invested in your brand. And David, we talk about the use of creativity within ABM, brand partnerships. Please feel free to talk about those topics and how they can contribute in this omnichannel strategy.
One thing I was thinking whilst everyone was talking about sort of the the challenges and how we scale and tying that back to the point earlier about the sort of channel selection is, I think when you try to go from ABM and go broader, there is definitely a consideration around channels that might become relevant, that and even more, I suppose, more cost effective than if you were in sort of a pure ABM mode. So, using 11FS as an example, we have a podcast, the Fintech Insider podcast, which purely is there because it helps us build relationships and helps us influence those direct as well as those indirect decision makers, and it's super effective. But if I was purely focusing on an ABM strategy, we probably wouldn't have done that, because there's more cost-effective ways of reaching those people and building those relationships. So I think from that sort of creativity perspective and how you leverage your brand, there's also consideration around which channels allow you to cut through. I mean, when we started 7 years ago, podcasts was not the active space that it is now. So there's more sort of room to cut through. So if I had to start again now, I'd be thinking which channels give me that opportunity to cut through, to reach a wider audience, and really build that brand resonance in a creative way. What are you guys doing, David?
Well, it's not necessarily us, but our clients. I think first and foremost, I think when we talk about creativity, there's different kind of lenses to it. I think visual creativity and words and design, in my experience, typically gets left to the last kind of the point of ABM. ABM being such a strategic motion, rooted in deep research and insights into accounts and people within that. That's where your time wants to be spent. But I think we miss that point of like, what emotions do I want someone to feel when I now talk to them in such a personalized way? And, I see stuff go out and I'm like, that could have been a little bit more inspiring. But I get it, because you spend so much time investing in who it is and what you want to say. It's a real shame. But I think AI has a great opportunity to help us kind of streamline those things, whether we can use, data points. We know there's great advancement with content creation, copy creation, that maybe it gets to the point of going, well, now we save some time and effort, let's do something that's really going to have a lasting impact on someone. They're going to remember that time where that company targeted them with something that's really valuable. And I think that's, creativity in that side, but also just what we do. I think that goes into hand in hand, like, what's the idea and how do we make it resonate? But I think that comes on to what Jonathan's talking about in terms of number of accounts that you can select and what ABM means to you as an organization. We've got some clients that are really invested one-to-one. That's it. That's ABM for us. And so that's a long journey. It's not a tactical piece of work. Then you go, hey, have we got any pipeline from it? You're typically working over a 2-year period of time. It's painstaking. And at the end of that 2 years, you might actually win anything. So if it's talking about ABM with a little bit more scale and more, I think that's where, I'd like to see a little bit more emphasis on the brand and the creative idea that allows us to, really leave something lasting and has a longer term view and the impact and the advocacy and the feeling that you'll get from that brand.
So we tried to implemented this content strategy that was called Easy Mode last year, that tries to help us think about all of these things to be sort of creative going out to market. And we started off very broad, like one for each persona: sales, marketing, RevOps for us. And then we're now thinking about how we could break that down and say we're going tighter, and then we'll have like for enterprise, maybe certain industries. And the idea that helps with creativity is you take a top opinion that your company believes. So we'll say like B2B buying behavior has changed, and then we'll create certain point of views off of that we'll test to see if they resonate with the market. So might be like for marketers, we might say marketers need to be more than just sales support. And then from beneath that, you can come up with lots of different like subject matters to that point about how you can be more than just sales support to your salespeople, like to your sales team. And then within that, we then break down the content into creating it for top down, middle out, bottom up. So evangelizing users and then convincing the people who have also got the purchasing decisions and the managers who can sort of like can massively influence it. And then into 3 different content types as well, which is type 1, type 2, and type 3. So type 1 being informative, type 2 being informative with an interesting spin on it. So you could be like giving the information through a quiz show. And then like type 3 being that edutainment content, which we're not quite there with yet being that great at, but there's loads of inspiration on LinkedIn. But the idea is it's supposed to, with then your campaign that you put out, it's supposed to inspire that creativity, right? You don't just take a content topic, release a white paper, put it out there. You really think about what are the issues that's resonating with your audience, break it down into point of views, and then you create that content where you can for each of the people that you need to influence in different and exciting ways. Especially you can then think about, you know, being a bit more than just doing another talking head video, and being informative. You can think about maybe those type 2s and type 3s. It's taken a lot of work, and like I feel like it's a lot that we're still working on, but it helps us sort of like get that creativity, I suppose, at scale with different campaigns.
Yeah, definitely sounds like a huge challenge, but everything starts from a very clear strategy of putting your client at the center, focusing on your vision around your clients. We had a couple of months ago the VP of marketing from HubSpot, and he told us, we don't sell software, we create careers. And they truly believe that, you know, they have invested such an amount of time and effort in creating the HubSpot Academy, and you realized after, I don't know, maybe years of learning from HubSpot Academy that they are a CRM, right? And finally, then you buy their product. So yeah, it's a huge challenge and journey. David, I wanted to ask you something about the challenges when you adapt to new markets or verticals. You gave me a great example about Maersk, which is a shipping company, but actually they are selling a software or something like that.
Well, like a lot of businesses, right, that have come from legacy kind of analog, if one of a better description, services. They need to move through, and so when you're moving into a new category, I think that's what I was discussing with Maersk is they're not known for that, right? They have legacy, they have history, then they've got relationships of what they deliver and what they provide to their customers. And so when you start to shift into new categories, it's really important, to do that basis of research. What does that category look like? Who are the players? Who are winning that category? And ultimately, what's our foundation of success? Where do we go and win? It's great to be able to think that you can enter a new category and then just be immediately successful. It's not the case, because we've seen a lot of brands kind of move into something and it fail. And so, I think whether it's Maersk or anybody else, using intelligence, researching on the competitor base, looking at the category and the opportunities, who are the leaders, who are the laggards, and identifying within the audience exactly where you're going to win, but also sizing that audience effectively so you can go and spend marketing dollars to influence them, to be able to shout about that new category, that new service. And
we lost him a second.
I've got a thought if David can interrupt me when he comes back. Oh, he's back.
We lost you for a second, David.
Sorry. I don't know where I ended there because it didn't tell me that I dropped. Am I muted?
No, we can hear you.
Sorry, I'm now getting the relay of messages as I speak, telling it's unstable. So apologies, I don't know where I ended there.
You probably lost 10 seconds, I'd say.
Okay. Well, where I was going towards was actually some, like a brand like HP is quite an interesting one because, we know them as a, laptops, hardware, them moving back into software or them moving into other hardware spaces is a real big challenge because why would I buy from you over somebody I already know is in this category? So 3D printing. Why would I buy a 3D printer from HP? You're just another big brand come into a new vertical. And I think that's a really challenging thing for brands to be able to do that without the right foundations of the research in terms of, well, where's our opportunities to win?
We had YouGov on the podcast recently, and their problem is everyone thinks they're part of the government. They don't even think they're a company.
But that's a real challenge. I mean, my example of that is, excuse me, I was in an event recently and Adobe is doing some work in financial services, targeting fintech. Apologies to anyone from Adobe listening or work with Adobe. And someone said to the Adobe guy, why are you here? You guys just do PDFs, don't you? So, I mean, they were partly tongue in cheek, but partly like that is their perception of their view of how they interact with Adobe. So if they then Adobe tries to just take that credibility that they've built up with the design and then maybe a marketing audience and transfer that into financial services, like, and you assume that just translates, never mind the sort of product education. I think that's David's point of, there's definitely some of your brand strength and credibility, etc., that you can borrow, but you need to really deeply understand whether that translates into your new category. If that's something they care about, like, do they care about the fact that you are high tech when you're moving into a category that actually just cares about trust? So it's understanding which levers you need to pull when you move into that category. And I think that's your positioning and your storytelling. You don't have to reinvent yourself, but you just need to understand which bits you need to dial up and what you need to dial down.
I would strongly agree with that as well. I think it's when the brand has a good understanding of where it's been and what its values are, they move into a new category. It could be just some company they've been involved in logistics and transportation, for instance, not using the name Maersk, but something like that, and then they maybe move into data management or something. So they're moving large bits of information around and managing it as opposed to physical entities. But if they reflect on the values they had and the integrity they had and the quality they had, and then somehow translate that into this new service, I think that's where examples like that is where I have seen success. But if you sort of jump into something and suddenly you're a brand new fellow and you've got these new values, this brand which means nothing, and when your researchers and the people you're trying to influence look you up and they give you a quick Google, they think, well, it just doesn't make sense, does it? So I think knowing your values and integrity.
Adobe would have had to dig a bit deeper into, it's not just hiding. What are the things we can emphasize that are other things that people would like about it without it being high tech?
Well, not just the PDF creator or converter and all the other things that they stand for sure.
Sorry again, Adobe.
Picked on Adobe.
Yeah, but David, you were mentioning before about the research that you need to do when you are approaching whatever the challenge that you are approaching in omnichannel. How do we ensure the data quality when we are scaling? It's an open question.
Oh, that's a really good. How can you validate data quality? It's most definitely difficult if you're only looking at one source of data, I guess. I mean, depending on what you're looking to use the data for, but I think everyone in this call know, value in third-party data. It has to be massively scrutinized in terms of its validity and the timing of it. The quality of your first-party data. I've seen some clients have got phenomenal data lakes and you know, and collected all this data, and it's, what can I do with it? You know, and some that I've had real challenges. And well, I think when you're making decisions off the back of data, I think, look, for me, if we're talking about, you know, those moving into new areas and really knowing your kind of brand truth in order to be able to land somewhere there, it's, you know, looking at things like market share, you know, things that are actually out there that we don't always look at. You know, what is the market share? What's our market share? What's our competitors? You know, and then trying to balance that with things like share of voice, right? Can we make a big enough noise in order to move the needle? Because all the other components in terms of active buyers and who's in consuming what, it kind of has to follow the basis of the opportunity, what I was mentioning, right? So when I talk about market share, it was like, well, if we have zero market share and we've got no market share of voice, no one knows that we do this, how do we do it? That's a starting block. You know, that's an investment in getting your name out there. And the reality is getting revenue off the back of that's going to be really, really challenging. So you start measuring kind of impact of share of voice, and then you start plugging in, okay, does it have a contribution? Is it, you know, is it measurable to bottom line business? And so the types of data, I think it's multitude of using good old-fashioned research into markets and into audiences, and then looking at what data you've got available about the organizations and the people within those that, you know, you can go, you know, to start building like almost like an addressable market. So probably don't answer that in the simplest way that you maybe were intending, but I think for me, it's always what we've learned over the last 10, 15 years is that there's been an insurgence of multiple data points and fantastic data, but unless you have a real clear vision and idea of what you want to use that data for, it's just data, and it just sits and is not addressable and is not usable, and you just get into this motion of building more data without really helping you turn, you know, the screw on one particular thing you're trying to do.
Liam might have a perspective on that, given you're working at Cognism.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's true. Like, and we find that, like, you basically, it's the whole idea that, like, at the moment as well, measuring everything, or like absolutely everything, because you need to know every data point to make any decision. But then the second challenge that then you come is to see, like, well, how do I use it all? Or I find the team builds tons of reports without really thinking about first the question that they're trying to answer. So then we've got these reports, they just say something, and I'm like, but, you know, what does that mean? What are you trying to get from that? I think something that's helped us is just like creating, like with its scaling as well, it's just creating a real, like, a structure. So if we add in a new region, we know that we like, in terms of like the first party data we're collecting, we know that we want to set it up in the exact same way, get the, you know, run like paid for a certain amount of time to then build like a dynamic benchmark sheet that we can then have benchmarks for those regions. Then we'll have like certain reports that we know that we're setting up and how so we can track pipeline, and then also on the other side, engagement, and try and make links and inferences between the two. And then if we have those structure and we follow it, and then we have additional questions on top of that, then we can then go back to the data that we have got, or go externally to try and find those answers. But I think the most important thing to us is just having some sort of repeatable structure around reporting and data, so that we can sort of get the core answers that we need, and then not maybe worry ourselves with all the possible things we could ask. Yeah. We could ask ourselves. But yeah, obviously having something like Cognism as well, where you can enrich data points quite easily as an internal resource is great. So that aside.
Yeah, I think it almost sometimes gets a bit worse when people are working from home, because unless you're regularly, like, we met up recently as a whole marketing and sales department, and I think we came away with a much better idea of what we should be measuring, because I think otherwise people working at home in their own little worlds get really concerned about certain things that might not move the needle for the next step down the pipeline.
Mhm. I also find it's like between like that we have as well. It's like it's different departments measuring things in different ways and like using like between like rev ops and marketing, and then
what is an MQL?
Right. Yeah.
Definitions are always helpful.
Yeah.
Well, great discussion about data. Let's focus on attribution through omnichannel lens. So how do you attribute success through various channels when our campaigns grow in size and complexity? Mariette, we talk about the importance of brand a lot, also today. And so how can also you bring brand into the attribution equation? And also when you're talking about different markets and different channels.
Well, can you asking all the easy questions today? Solving data quality and attribution on one podcast. I mean, I raised this because this was on my mind with just challenges that we're facing, because as a business that does invest quite heavily in content and brand, we by no means have that attribution nailed. So I'm always looking to learn, but also always looking to sort of improve and build on what we have. As with any B2B business, our challenge is that is our sales cycle. So something that happened 3 years ago and the guy that did that doesn't work here anymore now led to something, and how is that tracked, and how do you do more of that? So I mean, for me, my sort of mindset is just automate as much as you can. And what I mean by that is let's again use the HubSpot example, but where you are able to automate tracking of data points or actions or triggers or whatever, so that you're not asking a salesperson to manually go in and flag where they met this person. Just automate as much as possible. And then this is maybe slightly contradictory to which I just agreed with everyone. Don't use data, have data for the sake of data, but I think there's a lot to be said for data collection, so that you can then use that in more sophisticated models. So track what you as much as you can. Don't get sort of sidetracked with that data, but then automate it as much as you can. That's just where my head is.
I would agree with Mariette as well. I think the automation is really important. So you sort of take all the variables away from individuals, and you can sort of preset, if you like, and centrally you can adjust those presets. And I think collecting that data. It's a while back I worked for a CEO of an MSP, and his catchphrase was always "the data doesn't lie." But actually, it was really difficult to take the volume of data and make it meaningful. But we have the advantage today, I guess, where we can collect large amounts of data, and not particularly in a low cost way, but using machine learning and so on, you can extrapolate a lot of very valuable information to maybe adjust the automated approach from that data. And there are platforms that will do that right. So
it'd be a pretty good way to encourage SDRs to use the CRM, because then you could say, well, look, there's a huge history of them engaging on the website, and then you book them as a sale right away, but you didn't do anything in between. So I'm going to attribute that to the website.
Marketing's the value. That's what it is.
Exactly.
And from a campaign configuration, we had a very interesting episode a couple of weeks ago about campaign focused versus always on. And one of the chaps there was saying you can't attribute if you are running always on campaigns. It's impossible almost to show attribution if you are dividing your budget thinly through the year, because you don't know if an account is converting at certain point of the year because of the always on campaign. He told us, no, you need to create campaign focus campaigns and see if an account is converting, is because it passed from awareness, consideration, and finally conversion. What do you think about that?
Well, I would disagree. But I think it's
same here. I would disagree as well.
Yeah, I don't think you can get okay, so it won't ever be as easy as if you're going for like a linear approach that they're going to interact with your campaign, then your SDR calls them up and books a meeting, and now they then they scroll, and then they're finally it's close one, and it's like, that's beautifully linear and great. But like, we actually know the reality of like marketing doesn't work that way. So I feel like you can limit yourself, like try and like squash everyone into the funnel that you want so it looks nice in your CRM. I just think we would ask, so we'd have the automated parts of attribution. So, traditional attribution collecting, like your like last touch UTMs, first touch UTMs. And obviously that will give you one view from your campaigns, which is often all of your performance marketing is king. But then also we'll have like on the thank you page of after our form, we'll have, how do you hear about us? So then you can pick up a lot of your campaigns after that. And that's like obviously that self-reported attribution. And then we use hockey stack as well. So like on top of that, to then try to track all of those extra touches that we can, to try and spell out a journey, whether they came through an SEO page first and then viewed a ton of LinkedIn ads and then came back. And it's, in reality, it's messy, and it's messy to do that. And you can't actually, most of the time, we'll just rely on some self-reported attribution and like traditional attribution to tell us something. We'll just take a quick snapshot. But then when we've got these big enterprise journeys, then we'll delve into hockey stack and do the messy work. But if you want to actually know how everything's coming together, it's messy in the first place. So it has, how you record it is then messy backwards.
I think there might be something to be said for the idea of a big idea in marketing, like, in the B2C world, I don't know, Marlboro Man, or I don't know, pick your kind of mega kind of brand successful thing. And there's probably something to be said for promoting creativity in the team by encouraging them to have this big idea and then have a massive comprehensive campaign and then see how much can be attributed to this thing, probably. But otherwise marketing just keeps being incremental and everything's messy and perhaps it doesn't promote that big idea. I
think it's definitely not enough of that kind of thinking goes into, whether it be the Marlboro Man, but something of that you can hang your hat on from who we are, right, and what we stand for, and how and what we're going to be known for. I think the difficulty in B2B, as everyone will know, is that it's you're selling something that's complex, and it's pretty serious. It's responsibilities. In some cases, you're spending millions. So trying to get that fine edge of telling a story and investing in that, but also where those moments where you educate and really get into the detail and getting that tone right from that thing that I caught your attention with. You asked a question of our favorite campaigns. Two I put out there. One of them was Workday Rockstar, which I love because it's entertaining and it's just different. But does that influence people's decision? I don't know, right? Because I'm not a decision maker, so I don't see anything other than the thing on YouTube. And I think the other one was the Autodesk thing they did at the Oscars, right? About Autodesk is actually everywhere. You just don't know it. And I thought that was quite nice. But other than that, I won't see this stuff because I'm not a decision maker. And I imagine if I was, beyond that, we're getting into pretty technical information, and it's really hard to get that balance.
I'd agree, though. There's a lot to be said for having breakthrough elements to your, whether it's always on or whether it's sort of cyclical campaigns, not just from a sort of messaging perspective, but literally you need something to break through on those channels. So you can just put some momentum. You need a little bit of that. How do you draw eyeballs to a big moment? And then you have your long tail, because we're all competing with every single content creator on LinkedIn. So give yourself something to fight with. But then to David's point around the campaigns, I mean, it's interesting because maybe this is all of our interpretations of what a campaign is, because Liam, we're already a customer, so I'm not fishing for discount here. But actually, I thought of Cognism because that was actually an ad that got sent around my team.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was a campaign. It was maybe it was tasting, who knows? But you know, for me, that was, you know, a nice piece of content, a nice message, got sent around, and people were like, this is cool, we should do this. There you go.
Cognism does LinkedIn very well.
Yeah. Great content. Great content. Well, we are coming to an end. I need to thank you, all of you. It's been a great conversation. We will be in touch very soon. I don't know if you want to say a word, please feel free to.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's been great.
Brilliant.
Thanks,
guys.
Cheers.
Good to meet you.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Bye.
See you soon. Bye.